I'm Alexis, and this is the Whatcha Watchin podcast. And today I'm really excited because we're talking about a movie that I love so much that I saw it twice in a week. And we are talking about it with one of my favorite film people. He is a comedian. He's a podcaster. He does the Last Video Store podcast. He does Total Reboot, Mic Check. I mean, all the Finding series. He's amazing. He's one of my favorites. Alexei Toliopoulos is here. Alexei, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it is my pleasure, Alexis. Thank you for having me here.
Absolutely. So we're talking about Anora today. This is a movie where I loved it, and then I immediately went to Letterboxd and saw that you loved it, and I was like, nice, this is great. So yes. I guess to just kind of jump in, like, let's just, what did you really like about it? You saw this at like Sydney Film Fest, or was this at a different?
So it was kind of like a special screening via Sydney Film Festival. Nice. And via Kismet, which is like the Australian distributor of the film, and the Sydney Opera House, which are now screening films regularly. So there's like a great like screening program and screening programmers there at the Opera House. So it's like a special collaborative event, and very early, because from what I understand, because Anora became like this quite quick critical festival awards season darling, not completely unexpectedly, but for a film, Sean Baker's never quite had that heat before. So I think very quickly they're like, okay, this is mainly just going to do TIFF, and then they're going to roll it out as an award season thing rather than a festival film from that point. So it was kind of like a very early screening before it comes to Australia towards the very, very end of the year. So I absolutely had to make sure I went to go see it.
Nice. That's great. Yeah. We had a press screening of this on a Monday, saw it on the Monday, couldn't stop thinking about it all week. And then when it opened on Friday, I was like, I'm going to go see it again on Friday. So I ended up going again because I was like, this is just one of those movies that I think really, sort of sticks in your mind for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I just got my press or media screening invite. I'm like, well, yes, I'm going to see this again. Absolutely. Totally. As soon as I can.
Yeah. The second I saw it, I was like, okay. And then now I'm like, once it hits streaming, I'm going to watch this like 4 or 5 more times because it's just like, I don't know, man. It's a movie that I just feel like I connected with so much in so many ways.
Yeah, I think there's something about films that offer distinct and unique pleasures where you just go, well, I need to see that again because I need to feel those things again, or I need to have those experiences again. And I think Anora is definitely a film that I would categorize in that way.
Yeah. You mentioned, like Sean Baker has had movies that are like, I feel like film nerds know about them. But then this does feel almost like his most kind of accessible movie. It feels like his most kind of mainstream movie, in a very good way. To me, it's kind of, it's like the sort of fairy tale aspect to it. It's got so much humor in it. And it's kind of the coming of age story. I was almost like, it's sort of like like an artsy version of like She's All That in so many ways. Like it's got this kind of almost teen movie quality to it, that makes it feel very accessible to audiences. And I mean, on top of that, all the performances and everything, I just think it's a movie that people can connect with, that maybe are like not super familiar with his work, or maybe like the subject matter might be intimidating to them, but this is accessible in a different way.
Yeah, I think you're really spot on with that, because when you think about Sean Baker, he has like a specific tone or a specific approach to filmmaking, which is this kind of like filmmaking of empathy and filmmaking of immersion, finding interesting stories kind of out there in the real world or inspired by culture in a really interesting way. And I think, or like I would say, definitely different versions of American life, like explorations of American life, and find like different slices of American life to explore, usually in the realm of like sex workers and sex work. I think with this one in particular, I don't think he strays at all from his hallmarks or what makes a Sean Baker film feel like a Sean Baker film. But I like that point you're making of it feeling more accessible, because I think he's found a way to package those up in quite a sleek way And for me, the way of doing so is speaking through genre. And I always say this often. You've probably heard me say it freaking heaps, but I think of genre as like the way to communicate to audiences, because it's a language that they understand. Whether they know they are fluent in that language or not, they understand it. And Anora basically, it communicates to an audience as a screwball comedy, like that romantic comedy where that really, really old style romantic comedy from the 1930s onwards, where it is like a brassy or a bigger, bolder female character and a less dominant male character, and the kind of like hijinks and like the high stakes that they go through. And I think this is that thing. Like I didn't expect to see something so, extremely funny. I think a lot of these movies are funny, but I think this is an extremely, extremely funny film, and it has incredible comedic escalation, but also it has like this high tension where it's like high tension. It's really like quite feels like you're watching a thriller at points, like a nerve-wracking, nerve-inducing thriller, but so much of the pool of the tension is released through comedic escalation, which I think is just genius. I think he's really figured out a way to do what he does to reach a bigger audience in a really effectively communicated way, and really still quite emotional. I think it's just a spectacular film.
Yeah, I was thinking about, there's that like 20 plus minute sort of sequence where it just becomes like such full comedy. But yet it's like a situation that is sort of like a dangerous and tense situation. And it's played for comedy in a way where you're able to laugh at this situation. And I thought about a long time ago, there was some documentary about I think it was Spike Lee's documentary about the Thriller album, and Questlove had this thing where he said, he's like, in the hands of a lesser producer than Quincy Jones, this song would have become something else. And I kept thinking about that scene in terms of like, in the hands of a lesser director than Sean Baker, the way that this scene would have played out would have either been way too goofy or way too tense. We wouldn't have hit that comedic tone in a way where the entire scene, I was cracking up. Everyone in my theater was laughing. I mean, it's just, you immediately, it's like, it's disarming of the tension, and you just embrace the sort of chaos of it in a way that becomes so funny. I completely adored that about it.
What were you anticipating going into the film?
I think like going in, you hear that this is sort of a Cinderella story, and it's basically like, oh, this stripper marries a billionaire's son, and then like what happens after that? And you kind of know like there's no way this is going to actually be sort of a fairy tale and it's going to end with like a happily ever after, but you don't really know exactly what to expect, because I think even, the marketing of it has been very like rom-com-y kind of vibes. And it has that in there, but then it also has so much more in there. How about you? What were you sort of anticipating going into it?
I think because I try not to read too much about movies before I see them. Like it's just enough to kind of get a gist or to have the film on my radar, I guess. And I think it being so, I guess, like it's starting this kind of like award season run was what it kind of felt like when I started hearing about it. I think it was after, was it Cannes or Venice where it won a big prize?
Yeah, the Palme d'Or.
And so I was kind of like anticipating it to be, I don't know, there was something about it where I was like, oh, okay, I think it's going to be like quite, not serious, but I thought it would be, honestly, I thought it would be like I kept hearing like this fairy tale, like this Cinderella type story thing that you're alluding to as well. And I thought that it would mean that it would be, I don't know, like almost like a My Big Fat Greek Wedding. Like I really thought it would be like a culture clash thing where it's like, oh, these people are from different worlds, but they're coming together. And I really, for some reason, and this made to be like not My Big Fat Greek Wedding. Like, I didn't think it was going to be like a broad comedy. But I thought it would be like a same kind of like culture clash comedy or culture clash drama, that kind of like prestige thing. I go, oh, okay, well, this is this lovely story about this sex worker and this guy that fall in love. I thought it was going to be about love. And love overcoming obstacles for some reason is what I thought it would be. And so just when the movie is not that whatsoever, it plays on like some of those ideas, and it is about like a culture clash in a way that I found really fascinating, where it's kind of about I found it to be a really like a quite a singular approach to exploring a diaspora. And I think that's something that I connect with. Like, I grew up in a diaspora culture here in Australia. I grew up in like a Greek and Mediterranean community in Australia. I saw a lot of like stuff in this film that I felt were reflections of similar world to I grew up in, where you see different classes within the culture. Like, she's obviously like a sex worker, but like, you know, she's probably second or third generation. She barely even speaks Russian. And then you have the different like ethnic minorities within that same kind of big diaspora. And then you have like these oligarchs from overseas that still come, and when they come to America, they still enmesh with that diaspora as well. And I found that like just so fascinating to see all these different levels of class and the separation to it. And it is like a diaspora that you do not see portrayed much in American cinema. The only other filmmaker that immediately came to mind that has explored like this Russian Brighton Beach diaspora is James Gray, who did Little Odessa. He did We Own the Night. And last year he made that lovely film, or year before, with like Anthony Hopkins and Anne Hathaway. Do you remember that film?
Yeah. I can't
What's
remember
it called?
I
have no memory of what it's called, though. I quite liked it. But there's something about, I think, exploring this this like really interesting, vibrant community in these specific parts of New York that you do not really see much in films, or from angles you don't really see much in films. I think that is that kind of slice of life quality that Sean Baker's really able to explore quite well. Last night I watched Takeout, one of his earliest films that he collaborated with another filmmaker on, and that is set in I think Chinese diaspora or Mandarin-speaking diaspora in America. Through it's a story of like a takeout delivery boy, delivery man going around trying to, also one crazy night he has to pay back all this money, yada yada yada. But it is like these really specific. He's got this very specific eye that's almost like a documenter's eye, where he can like see this world and explore it, make it feel real, but also make it feel very cinematic. And I think that's what Anora is able to capture so well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that that kind of realism level, and then with all the kind of trademarks of like a sort of cinematic presentation of that, but yet all the characters feel very like plucked from reality. That to me was a huge strength of it as well. And I think my family is Italian on my mom's side, small town in Colorado, Italian community there. And my grandmother did not speak Italian, but understood Italian. And it was very like, well, my mom's dad's side of the family was very like, we should all speak Italian. We should be very Italian. And then my mom's side of the family was very like, no, we need to just fully assimilate. So I think that creates a really interesting dynamic too with, one of the early criticisms is that she feels sort of insecure about her Russian. And then, so I think the kind of like fitting in or not fitting in within that community is just like adds another element to it where, she comes to this world of wealth as an outsider, and then she comes to sort of Russian as an outsider. And so I really liked the kind of way that it others her in a lot of ways, but she also feels like she's a little bit in the door because she does speak a little bit of Russian. So she's a little bit there. And then she is with this guy, and it's a little bit of, well, maybe this is going to be my future. So that kind of feeling of being sort of halfway in with these things, but you're never fully in, was something that I found so relatable. And I also just found so instantly kind of moving with her character. It just made me immediately feel for her.
Yeah, you're spot on, I think. And I think that performance by Mikey Madison is just... Oh, yeah. It's such a rich performance when you think about like how much interesting different aspects that she has to do. Like, there's so much physicality and how much the character expresses himself physically, how much the character is dominating while being lower status in scenes, how she's able to bring that energy for those moments, and then also how she's able to hold stuff within. Like there's moments of where you see either things that are breaking through or things that are beneath the surface. I think it's a very, very complex performance, and one that I think is completely deserving of all the praise that I've been seeing around it.
Absolutely.
But it's just it's a really like great breakthrough calling card performance where you can kind of go, oh, what is this person capable of? They can handle being the lead of a really stressful, fun movie that's like a complete, tonally singular, unique, yet completely diverse film as well, in the way that it kind of speaks and the way it kind of feels. And I think to be able to handle the load of being the lead of a film like that is an extremely impressive task that has been completed with this film, and with Mikey Madison as its lead performer. I think it's really excellent.
Fully agree. I think like what she's able to do just in her performance, from when we see her sort of at the club and she's sort of hustling, to then when we start to see her, you know, maybe develop some actual real feelings in this transactional relationship. And then it's kind of, she's navigating the situation where she kind of doesn't really know where she stands, but she avoids that kind of like strong woman cliche thing of like always being really tough in every situation. And that we do kind of start to get to see like vulnerabilities with her and everything throughout the story. It just makes it where she is just immediately a character that you love and you're rooting for her and you want this all to work out and be great for her. So I think like for us as an audience, the sort of way that this story plays out, we're just like, oh, but let it be okay in the end, right? Or like, oh, but then it's actually like his parents are going to come around, or well, this is going to be this, or, you know, like, and you start to just feel like, but it's all going to be fine, right? You know,
I think that's it. That's when I'm talking about communicating through genre. I think that's what we get from this. Like whether it's playing into our expectations or subverting those expectations. You have these moments where you go, oh, I'm rooting for this character. And of course, it's the magic of a movie, so things are going to work out okay. So you keep feeling like that's a thread that's pulling you along. Like that's what is keeping you in the zone of this film, feeling hopeful for this character, is because you know how this genre plays out. But then it is so good at subverting those expectations, but then also delivering moments that align with those things. And towards the film's ending, there are moments that have those little magic to them that are given, but then even those are subverted. I think there's something about that, like the storytelling in that aspect from Sean Baker, that I think is what is making this film connect with so many people, and seeing people really just fall in love with this film in ways I've not seen other Sean Baker films like Tangerine or even Red Rocket or Florida Project, which at the time I thought were much more accessible films, really, really latch on to people. I think it's what you're saying. It's like there's that thread of hope and hopefulness and that love that you feel for that character, that do not feel as perhaps tragic or tragicomic as those other films do.
Yeah, for sure. I think, you know, just thinking of like Red Rocket, I mean, like, you know, Simon Rex's character in there is incredibly charming, but at the core, you're like, this is a bad dude, but he's so charming that you want to watch him, but you're not necessarily like, you're rooting for him, but you're also kind of like, he's not a great guy. Versus this, where I feel like with Annie, we're like, yeah, but I love her, you know, like, yeah, but I want her to succeed. Like she seems so good, and not in like a saccharine, fakey kind of way. She just seems like a person that we would like. Like if you knew her, you would like her. So you want her to succeed in like a very different way. And I think it makes it where you really are just like on board for this story. And that is the hope. Like you watch it and you do feel hopeful that everything will just sort of work out for her.
Yeah, that's it. It's just it's a great character, great characterization, and I think the supporting cast around that performance as well, of being either people that you don't know, have never seen before, or some people that feel like they're real discoveries that are out there in this world. It kind of sings very harmoniously together. Like all the henchmen or the Armenian handlers, I think there's just like this great dynamic around each of them, because it is all about power. Like it's all about status and power in this film, and who has it and who hasn't got it, and who has it in relation to who else has it. There's something about that that's quite fascinating, and such a fertile ground for comedic play. And also Mark Eidelshtein, who is Vanya, the oligarch, or the son of an oligarch, who is kind of, I guess, the romantic love interest to an extent. If we're looking at it in a genre perspective, I think that is such a great performance as well, because he gets to play so much physically with this character. It's quite bold. It's quite weird. It's so unlikable at points. But then you go, oh, but I want her to have a great life. So maybe she will have a great life with this guy. It's a really, really strong performance in the way that it also plays with power and status. I love their dynamic together. Especially like there's great scenes of like him playing video games and her just around and go, oh my God, This is hell. This is hell.
It's like, it's very, he has all this power through money, but he just feels very much like a kid in so many aspects. And he does such a good job of playing that immaturity without like feeling like an actor playing that immaturity. Like he's young, clearly, but I mean, he's playing even younger, but not in a way that's like, when you see actors play kind of like teenagers or college kids, and it's just very cringe and very sort of like, hi, I'm an actor and I'm acting like a young kid, like you never get that from him. It all feels very natural and real, and he's immature in a way that's very charming. And you can see why, he appeals to Annie beyond just being super wealthy. Like he's not like her other, clients. He's not like the other people that she knows. He likes her. He seems like he's just really into her. So he's immediately somebody that, we want her to be with him. But then when we do see him be like, oh, he really is this really spoiled kid, we're kind of like, well, he's young. He'll grow out of that, because we just want it to work so bad.
Yeah, he'll grow out of it. He'll become evil. He'll become a weapons dealer like his family is, or whatever they're doing,
Well, I think at this point, I really want to chat with you about the ending, because the ending is something that I feel like everybody has been kind of like, the internet has had a lot of thoughts about, and some people are not into it, and some people feel like it's a beautiful way to cap this story off. So this is like the official spoiler warning. I think, first of all, both of us think that you should see this movie. It's great. Yes. We both really like it. Go see it. It's really good. And now we will get into spoiler talk. So I think the ending to me is fascinating because there's kind of like two pieces to it. There's the scene with her and Igor, sort of when they're going to have to leave the house and they're spending that sort of last night in the house. And we see her sort of insulting him, and, she seems like she hates him, but then, she goes and gets him a blanket from upstairs and all that. So we see that there's clearly like more than that there. And then there is the scene in the car where she finally sort of breaks down. And I've seen a lot of people be like, oh, she shouldn't have had sex with him in the car. But I also feel like that I think that completely fits with sort of her character and the narrative. I think it really works. And I love that we get to see this moment of actual vulnerability from her, and that it's triggered by a moment of actual intimacy, of true intimacy, of somebody who actually cares about her. It's not just a transaction. And that's when she sort of has the sort of emotional breakdown. But I also can kind of see both sides on it, with people that are arguing kind of either way on it. So how did you feel about, kind of the way that this all concluded?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting point, because for me it works. And it works in the way that you said, because I think there is an argument in there. Like, it is, to a degree, a revelatory moment for us as the audience for that character, and probably for the character themselves as well, where there's an action where completely, to an extent, it reveals something about the character that we can gather to a degree, but it kind of changes things a little bit, where there is a heartfelt moment, and then she has sex with the guy, and then she feels bad about that. And it is, I think what you're saying, like, it's like the transactional nature of sex as it is portrayed in this film as well. And I think it's like there's that realization moment. For me, it really works, because he is sad. Like, it's hard to see a character that we've loved for so long, who has been strong for quite so long, be like, fucked himself up, to put it bluntly, totally. by realizing like, oh shit, I'm doing this fucking thing again, or whatever it is. That really worked for me. And I would say maybe since the last two Sean Baker films, Florida Project and Red Rocket, the endings, like the last few, I'm saying like the last minute of the film, roughly, the last 2 or 3 minutes, or even less than that, is usually where I go, damn it. Like he just kind of like, there's almost like it's like a little topper or something, like a little cherry on top of the film that he adds in. And for Florida Project, spoiler for Florida Project as well, that's the one that's the clearest example for me, where I think Florida Project is a magnificent film. And the whole way I was watching it, I was like, this is one of the best films I've seen in ages. And then the last minute and a half or whatever, where it goes from being this kind of portrayal of naturalism or to extent neorealist world, but with beautiful film photography. But then you have this moment where then it goes, actually, it's surreal. We're going to Disneyland. We're going to see what Disneyland's actually like. And I felt a bit betrayed by that ending because the world is so set up and I feel so immersed in this world with these characters. And there's no hints of surrealism in the film, really, to my memory at least. No hints of surrealism to the film. And then you have this moment with these little girls. The style of the film changes for the last 2 minutes. You're on those handheld iPhones so they can sneak them into Disneyland or whatever. And it becomes like this surrealist escape for these two girls. And for me, I felt really... betrayed is a strong word, yes, but I felt betrayed. I'll say it again. I felt betrayed because I thought like this film was so elegantly communicating like what these girls' lives are, what their experiences are, and they should never. Those girls should never. I mean, obviously, I'm thinking these aren't real people, but for those characters, they should not have an image of what Disneyland actually looks like in their head.
Yeah,
it should
totally.
It should be like what they're imagining Disneyland. It's their biggest dream to go. It cannot be seen. Like it cannot be described what they're seeing. Their imagination is wild and fervent. It should not be a real place that they're imagining. They should be imagining being inside an animated film or a Disney or something like that. And to go and see like it's actually Disneyland and you take them there. I can imagine some people in the audience being like, oh, I feel power. I feel something for that. But all I felt was like, oh, but I think the movie was stronger not going there. And so I felt that way about Red Rocket to a degree as well. Tangerine, I think, is like perfect. So it's hard to say anything about that. Yeah. But then Anora, this does feel like the same kind of thing of like there's something a little extra for the ending. But this time it really worked for me because it is starting the conversation that, we're having of like, what did this mean for this character? What does this mean for the world as you presented it? And do we know Anora on a deeper level now? Or does Anora know herself on a deeper level now? I don't know. Just it really worked for me. I do understand people being hurt by that moment and feeling perhaps it was unnecessary or perhaps too far, that kind of thing. But for me, it's all in the performances and it's all in that relationship with Igor. And that great performance. I'm going to look up the name of the actor that plays him. His name is Yura Borisov. Yura Borisov. Beautiful performance. And there's something about this. It is a very sticky moment.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like it's almost like what Sean Baker does is sort of this last minute tonal shift kind of thing. And I think like with Florida Project, it's like, this is like a traumatic moment in this little girl's life. And then it's this tonal shift to like, and now we're running through Disneyland. And it's like, as much as you want that for this little girl, you also feel like, yeah, but that's not like, it doesn't fit with what's happening right now and what we've seen so far. And I feel like with Anora, it's an interesting tonal shift in that it's kind of the opposite effect. It's like, it's almost like the desire to stick a happy ending on like a depressing sort of story. With this, it's kind of the opposite. We've seen this kind of like running around and having fun and doing all this stuff. And then sort of shit hits the fan and it gets sort of, it gets darker for our, main character. But then we kind of have this shift where it's like, okay, now it gets like real in a way that everybody's felt real, but now it's real. Like now we're seeing all of her sort of armor is gone. And I really loved that. I think she's been so strong through the whole movie, and she's, they've been sort of on this quest to find Vanya, and she's been like, I will do this, and I am going to stay married. And I am, she's been very like insistent and strong and tough. And I really liked that it kind of plays with intimacy in a way where we've seen her do tons of sex scenes through this movie. And then we see this sex scene and it is notably different from all the previous ones, because this is one where it's like, oh, maybe this like means something to her. And I loved that. I think it's really fascinating that, again, it's like the power dynamics too, where she seems like she feels very in control of the situation. And then it's when he tries to kiss her that she freaks out and breaks down, because then that's when it's real intimacy. Like suddenly this whole kind of thing that she does, the hustle, the act, all that, it's like, oh no, but what if it's real? And that's where her vulnerability is just there. And she kind of doesn't know how to deal with that. And all the wave of everything she's been dealing with for this entire movie kind of hits her in that moment. And I loved that. I was like so into it. I was like, yes, this is exactly how this should end. This is totally correct. And, it is like it doesn't matter, like, does she date him afterward? Who cares? It's not like that's the whole point is it's this emotional sort of cathartic moment for her of being able to let her guard down in a way that we have not been able to see for this entire movie. And I was like obsessed with it. I loved it. I've thought about it constantly.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's also like, it's such a funny point to go like, oh, what happens next? Go, the movie ends. It does nothing happens next. Like, that's where the emotion of the story ends. I think that's something I always think about when it's like, yeah, that's where the movie ends, like you're allowed to imagine other stuff, but
totally,
that's it. And I think the build up to that moment as well, when you're talking about like it's shot so differently to the rest of the film, where you're inside the car with them, and shot differently to all the other times you're inside cars with characters, and all the close-ups and the exchange of dialogue are shot from complete POV perspective, where you're looking through Anora's eyes at Igor and Igor's eyes at Annie, and you're seeing them both that way. It's so intimate. You're like so in that car. You're like,
totally.
It's the way that it builds cinematically as well, the language it communicates in. Oh my God. I think it was
fully agree.
It really gets you to that point where you feel what those characters are feeling. Yeah, just expertly played.
It's like a gut punch where you're kind of, you know where the movie is going in a sense. You know that this Cinderella story can't really last, and you want it to, but it can't. And then it's sort of this last little moment where it really hits you so much harder. To me, that was what made the movie sort of linger in my mind for longer. It was a movie I was enjoying. And then when it got to that ending, it was a movie. That was when I think, to me, I was like, okay, this is an immediate top 10. Because that was where I felt like the impact.
Of all time or of the year? Okay.
It's going to be, I really, really liked it. I'd have to watch it a few more times to see if it's going to be like on like an all-time list. But that immediately, like that ending was where I was enjoying it. I was like, this is great. That ending happened when the credits sort of rolled. I was like, damn. I was like, okay, I'm going to need to rearrange some things on my Letterboxd list.
Oh shit, I've not been keeping a list this year. No, but I would say I agree with you. This might be my favorite film I've seen, new film this year.
Yeah.
Like a favorite of the year, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I think it would be my favorite. There'd be a few others like in near those top spots, but it's pretty clear that this is a special film for me, and it goes back to what I kind of begun the conversation that we have had with, of the unique pleasures. Like, this is a film that is a unique feeling, a unique set of tones. Nothing else delivers things this way. So I think that there's a reason this film will stick around for quite some time, in my opinion at least. And I do wonder what the future of this film holds, like what its legacy will be. I think it's really special. I think it's really good. I think, dare I say, it's Sean Baker's best movie.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think in a way, the kind of like small rollout of this is actually helping because, you know, you have where a friend has seen it and told you like, oh, this is so great. And it's kind of like when it's available to you, you got to make sure you go see it. And slowly but surely people get the chance to see it. And I think once you see it, it just hooks you. You just love it. So yeah, absolutely one of my favorites of the year. And I'm sure this will probably make my top 10 list when all is said and done.
Wow. Can I ask you, what is in those top spots in your top list at the moment?
I really loved Challengers. I think that's going to be in there.
Me too. Shit.
I feel like Dune has to go in there just because, like, to me, that's such a, you know, that is like an epic film experience in a way that, like, I crave from that type of thing. I have, let me look because I do have my Letterboxd. Let's see what I got in there and some of my faves for this year because that's a good question. Some of them, I feel like I've picked so many things where it's just like, I love this movie. So, The Substance is definitely going to go in there for me. Loved The Substance. I think Monkey Man was just something where I was like, man, this movie feels like it was made for me. I love this movie.
Yes. So, I'm with you. I loved The Monkey Man.
It was so good. Yeah, I think I really loved Hundreds of Beavers. Like that's such a small movie that I feel like people are not talking about enough. And that was so creative and so much fun. Like that's one of those ones where I want to put it on my list just to tell people like, you should go see this because it's worth it, you know?
Yeah, I think I keep forgetting because I saw it last year at the film festival that I'm just like, I keep thinking, but it's also played in cinemas in Australia since then this year. Yeah, I loved that. That's one of my very favorites. I loved Love Lies Bleeding. That was the first film I loved this year.
So good.
I thought that was amazing. And Challenges is right up there as well for me. And then I saw a few great films at Melbourne and Sydney Film Festival. One called Good One. By India Donaldson, which is just like a really small, funny, interesting film about like a camping trip. And All We Imagine is Life.
I just saw that recently. Loved it.
Yeah, really. That one really snuck up on me. I just thought that was very special. But I think it's overall been there's a lot of competition for great films this year for me to put in. And in documentaries, there was one I talked about a while ago called Ballomania that I saw at Sydney Film Festival.
I saw you put that on your Letterboxd and I was immediately like, when I can find this, I want to check it out.
Yeah. I don't know if there's any kind of distributor for it, but I really loved it. I was pushing for. That's what I talked about on my podcast as well. I was like, hopefully if I talk about it with this other film critic, maybe people go, we should do something about this. But yeah, I thought that was a really, really excellent documentary about hot air balloon artistry in Brazil. And I loved Argyle. Just kidding. I think it's one of the worst movies I've ever seen.
I think that was one of our first conversations on like direct messages.
Oh my God.
We were just going back and forth about like, can you believe this shit? Like,
oh my God. It's hard. I think about it so often. I've told people to watch it because I go, you just have to see this. You have to see this thing. Like,
it's like, this exists. Really... And they spent like $200 million on it. And I would love for you to tell me where. You know?
I forgot about it. I get every now and then I go, oh my God, Argyle exists.
It's so true.
Yeah.
Yeah, like something pops in your mind of like the rubbery CG or that horrible like oil slick ice skating thing. And you're just like, oh God, that was in a film that I watched. Like that really happened. Yeah.
The thing I always keep coming back to with that movie is like it's our song. It's the Beatles song was released like a month ago, mate. What do you mean you have a connection to it?
What? It's like every decision feels baffling in a way that's kind of fascinating.
Exactly.
Totally.
Oof, I'm gonna watch it again. I reckon. I reckon it's in my future watching Argyle one more time.
You can record a commentary track for it and put it on a Patreon feed. I suffered through
groaning.
this. I should get paid for it.
Yeah. Me groaning for it during the whole thing.
Awesome. Well, Alexei, thank you so much for being on. I mean, first of all, thank you for chatting with me about this movie that I love, because I'm like always looking forward to chatting about a movie I love, but I'm especially looking forward to it when it's chatting with you. So this has been
likewise, Alexis. This was so fun. I'm so glad we finally got to talk together. vocally about a great movie as well.
Totally. Well, let everyone know where they can find you. And I'm guessing if people are watching or listening to this, they already follow you on all the things and they already listen to all your stuff. But just in case they don't.
Well, if not, please follow me. I'm on Letterboxd and Instagram and all that stuff at thisisalexei. My podcast and show at the moment is The Last Video Store. That is my home base where I talk to cool people about their favorite movies. It's on YouTube. You can find it on the Batuta Advocate YouTube page. If you're American, Batuta Advocate's like The Onion in Australia. So I do official film podcasts for them, talking to cool people about their favorite movies. We've had Keith Urban on, where he talks about Nicole Kidman's one of her earliest movies. We had Jonathan Rhys Meyers, one of the great heartthrobs of cinema for people our age, from Bend It Like Beckham and stuff like that. And yeah, lots of really cool people will come by. So check it out. It's called The Last Video Store on podcast and on YouTube.
Awesome. Yeah, everybody check that out. I will put links in the description. If you like this video, leave a like, leave a comment, follow all of that stuff, all the little social thingies. And yeah, we will catch you in the next one.